This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing. Welcome, everyone. I think I have to address what it is that the YouTube viewers are seeing. Those of you who are listening via the podcast, you know that we always dress up in costume for this show. It's very normal. But for those of you who are listening this week, what the YouTube viewers are currently seeing is a little different in terms of the background. And that is something that I've been kind of hinting at for the last couple of weeks. I'm in the process of moving, and there will be many, many more details about that move to follow. Don't worry, won't interrupt the show. We'll still have Writers Not Writing, but it will be coming to you from a different location. So behind me, it absolutely looks like a disaster area, and the bookshelves are emptied, which, oh boy, there's a story there. But yeah, nothing bad, but we're in the process of a move. That may not be the thing that the YouTube viewers are noticing the most, though, podcast listeners. I am currently wearing this amazing, very, very bright, kind of cerulean blue wig. And the reason for that is last night, my wife and son and some of our best friends went to see Cyndi Lauper. And at the Cyndi Lauper concert, they were selling these in support of, or to raise funds for her foundation, which is called the Girls Just Want to Have Fundamental Rights. Girls just want to have access to fundamental rights, or girls just want to have fundamental rights. I'm not positive. I will look that up and post a link. And so if that is something that is important to you, please, by all means, support that foundation. And so Ms. Lauper asked us to wear these wigs, and it's a look for me that is, I kind of like it. I mean, I think it. I am. You may find this difficult to believe. I'm a person who is simultaneously, ravenously desperate for attention and also deeply anxious about his own physical appearance. I don't like to be seen, but I really want to be seen. It's a challenge. Yeah, this is a thing for me to deal with many a therapist probably for the rest of my life. Lots of body image issues. But in this case, yeah, so I don't know that I would be brave enough to wear this much out in public. Not generally a wig guy, and with the beard that doesn't match, although maybe I could get the beard in this color. I don't know. I don't do a lot of color, bright color. I'm wearing kind of a green hoodie sweater that is one of my favorites, but it's a very, drab color. And then I wear mostly black and gray. And yet this blue is so bright that the camera can't fully capture it. It throws off the color of everything around it, which made for some fun pictures last night. But this is relevant, believe it or not, because the opener for Ms. Lauper last night was an artist named Gayle. And you may have heard her song A, B, C, D, E, F, U. And my wife, Crystal, was telling me her kind of whole story of how that song in particular propelled her to fame via TikTok. I don't know if it was during the lockdowns, or what, but via TikTok, people discovered her, and then she blew up. And last night was her first night performing as the opener for Cyndi Lauper. And we were kind of marveling at what an experience that must be for Gayle herself to go from, uh, somebody who is playing songs in her own home and tossing them up on TikTok to 2 years later opening for somebody who is an absolute icon. Cyndi Lauper, by the way, 71 years old, rolling around on stage, smashing the stage, belting out with this incredible voice that is still just impeccable. It was, the show, she's really into art. And so there were these beautiful art installations built into the show. And of course, the fabulous costumes and everything, multiple costume changes. Cyndi Lauper is an icon, totally deserved icon. And Gayle got to, open for her and then come out and sing Girls Just Want to Have Fun, as one of the encores. And I was thinking about what a cool moment that must be for her. And that relates to today's show because I have always, my ambition is not to sing with Cyndi Lauper on stage. That would be really cool. I would sing with Cyndi Lauper anywhere, but nobody would want to see that. So my one of my lifelong ambitions has been to have an event at Powell's. And for those of you who are in the writing world, you know the name Powell's. Powell's City of Books is a bookstore in Portland, Oregon. That is a city block. It has since spiraled out into they have other locations as well, but the Powell's is I don't think they would be offended at all to be described as the Cyndi Lauper of books. And so authors from around the world, the biggest name authors you can think of have come to Powell's and have had events. And of course, I'm not in that place at all in my own writing career, but I had an experience that was metaphorically like Gayle's last night, in that I got to interview Brian Parker. And Brian Parker is amazing illustrator and author, and you've seen him on the show. I've had him on a couple of times actually now. And so he was going to do this event in Powell's and asked me to be the person who would interview him there. So that's going to be the bulk of our show. Apologize about the sound. It's a little bit wonky, but it's still, I think, very audible. And then you'll get to hear some of the readers from the anthology, The Magic We Miss, do their readings. And it was just... It was a magical experience for me, pardon the very intentional pun, because it was my kind of Gayle to Cyndi Lauper kind of experience. So I hope you enjoy this week's show. I apologize about the mess behind me. Don't worry, you won't be seeing that. You're going to be seeing Powell's. Enjoy this moment where Brian W. Parker is going to talk about The Magic We Miss.
All right, with that being said, we are excited to welcome Brian Parker here to discuss his and his partner Josie's new anthology, The Magic We Miss. Brian will be joined in conversation by contributor Benjamin Gorman, and this event will include readings by contributors John Slovacek, Niyyah Ruscher-Haqq, Sean Fishback, Annie Carl, Colleen East, and Stephanie Carrere-Boudrin. Brian and Josie live in Beaverton, Oregon, and are owners of Believe in Wonder Publishing, a youth-focused family publishing entity established in 2015, which focuses on creating sci-fi and fantasy children's books. With 20 titles to their credit, Believe in Wonder focuses on promoting imagination, inspiration, and positive thinking in audiences young and old alike. Many of Brian and Josie's children's books include themes of adoptions with the goal of better representation of lead characters of color. Their work brings awareness to the critical role and relevance of people of color in adoption from foster care. Brian will be joined in conversation by Benjamin Gorman, an award-winning high school English teacher, political activist, author, poet, and publisher at NotAPipePublishing. He lives in Independence, Oregon with his family, and his published work spans both fiction and poetry. All right, the anthology. In a city very much inspired by Portland, we find a young lady riding alone in public transit. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she catches a glimpse of an overreading newspaper. What follows is a growing friendship between them. Their interactions reveal a world of wonders that exists parallel to our own, but invisible to most. The stories in Brian and Josie Parker's anthology, The Magic We Miss, crafted by a diverse group of authors and visionaries, will unfold in this setting, each one a unique take on the idea of magic all around us. The stories feature magic, mystery, chills, thrills, and true connection, all with a focus on imagination, resilience, and embracing the unknown. Now, please give your warmest welcome to Brian Parker, Benjamin Gorman, and all of the contributors.
Well, thank you for that. I can skip my intro because that's done now. So welcome. We can jump right in here. So the big question for everybody is, how did you and Josie come up with the idea for this anthology?
Well, I don't know. First, even before I go into that answer, I want to take a moment of presence to thank you all for being here and seeing all your faces and this is magical. Literally, this is magic. We spoke this out to the universe, and here you all are, and that's a magic, and that means so much to us. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the idea is something that kind of lived in our house for a long time. We literally believe that magic happens all the time. My kids constantly are asking me, Dad, is Santa real? Is Santa real? And I'm like, yeah, he's real. Yeah. Sometimes I'm making Santa be real, but he's real. And the idea that maybe we've been kind of socialized to not notice magic as it's happening. And one day, I teach at Portland State. I was riding home on the Max. Was going through Pioneer Courthouse Square, and there was a festival going on. I don't even know what the festival was, but there were people coming in and off of the train wearing these kind of beautifully colored, handmade, very culturally specific and just gorgeously outfits, and I was just enraptured. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've crossed into some kind of parallel universe, right? And in the midst of experiencing that and being all excited, wrapped up in that moment, I looked around on the train, and a lot of people were literally looking out the window or looking at their phone or making this kind of conscious effort to not be present with that moment. And I was like, oh my God, does anybody else see this? Am I having an hallucination? Oh my God. But I literally, in that moment, I thought to myself, I could be sitting on this train next to a troll and nobody would notice. A troll could be sitting there just green and tusks the whole nine, and just everyone would literally try their best to look the opposite direction. So it's like, maybe public transit is how fairies and trolls and stuff get around, because nobody notices them. And the idea kind of like, that was the spark, and it lived in my brain and in my heart for 2 years as I was trying to figure out what was the best way to make it happen.
Did you write that story that is your version? That's Brian's story is in 3 parts throughout the book. Did you write yours and then think to create the anthology, or was that in process?
Well, the idea for the interactions between Maya and the troll on the train and his small Aziza friend. Aziza is an African kind of fairy, but in our world they are just these kind of amorphous kind of creative entities that can be whatever they want. That part was in my brain. But I realized that if you're going to make a magical world, this would be an awesome opportunity to invite other creatives into that process, because I didn't know what you guys were going to write. I gave you kind of a big prompt as to what the story was primarily. And I just wanted you to bring whatever magic was really inspiring you at the time. And then that, of course, helps with the world building. Everything else just kind of snowballs from there. So literally all of it was a surprise. Every image, every character, every story, every place was new, real. So now I can't forget any of that stuff. I'm literally waiting for the Hawthorne Bridge to get up at night and go for a walk. Hardest illustration in the book, but amazing.
Such a cool one. I love that story. So tell everybody about the process of putting it together, reaching out to, all the work that goes, because it's a ton of work that you two did to put this thing together. So explain to everybody how this book came about.
Oh yeah, first off, I have to bother Josie with this stuff. If anyone that's not met my beautiful wife and partner, Josie, raise your hand, babe. Yay! Every random idea I have, she is the sieve through which those ideas go through. And most of the time she catches all the bad ones. And she like really accentuates the good ones. And she knew that this idea had lived with me for a long time. Our publishing company, we've primarily published our own work, which has been cost effective for us because we're storytellers, we're artists, we're designers. So we don't have to pay anything out to anybody. But this one in particular felt like a really good way to start into, supporting our creative community and bringing in people and giving them this kind of podium to tell these stories that I think are really inspiring for people. So yeah, we sent out a call to all of our creative storyteller friends, and we're like, hey, this is this premise. This is something that you feel like you have a story that would live in this world. And we were so blessed that we had so many people that were like, oh yeah, I want to jump on board with that. And we have authors who have published mini books. We have authors this is their first published work, and those different perspectives and those different experiences, I think, just enriches the whole book as a whole. It comes from a lot of different perspectives, and I think that you really see magic when you can kind of stop it, see it from different angles. It's like light going through a prism, Sometimes it's broken up, and you have to kind of appreciate it from all the angles.
And to the authors for whom this is their first published work, it will not always be this easy. Where people just reach out to you and go, I want your story. That was when you talk about a magical moment. That's my work. That was very cool.
And we have so many people that we rely on as far as for advice and inspiration. Kate Bristow and Laura Stanfield and Dave Walker, and we talked to them about how do you do an anthology, how do you get people together to get something like this going, and we were supported in so many different ways. So thank you all.
So folks here know you're an author, an illustrator, an educator, a co-publisher at Believe in Wonder. It makes me curious. How do those roles kind of inform one another, and do you ever sleep?
I sleep real good because I'm busy all the time. By the time I get to bed, completely wiped out. And Josie knows because we both bought really large queen-size beds so that we could both starfish. All of it feeds into itself. What is creativity if not wading through chaos, right? And then finding those little sparks of joy, of illumination within there, and then trying to piece that together. In the story, there's a little guy, Mr. Ashi, that collects stories from people. And the way I pictured it was, I have an orange cat. He leaves orange cat hair everywhere, right? So I'm imagining people leaving stories and magic as if a cat shedding hair, right? You leave it everywhere you go. Every person that you interact with, every story that you share with someone, it literally impacts everyone. So if you can, and a book like this I think really inspires people to do so, if you can pick those things, if you can find a way to weave it together to make a really cool cat hair coat, I don't know. No, literally, it's like these little threads, they all kind of come together and they become something different and beautiful.
So, speaking of never sleeping, in the midst of putting this all together, you're working on the third in the Nicholas the Maker series at the same time.
Yes. Anybody here that's new to our stuff? Huh? What else? What? Your story, Josie's got a children's book that's coming out called Nana's Hooks about magical crochet. Which, yeah. I'm really bad about keeping up with all the projects. She's the boss, so she makes sure that I remember everything that's on the list. But we got Nicholas 3, which is coming out. If you're not familiar with the books, Nicholas 1 and 2 is about the origin story of Santa Claus and all of his adventures. I'm also working on a movie, Miraculous Elements, which is part 2 of Wonder of Science. Which has been long gestating, but it's coming. I promise it's coming. So we're constantly working. We try to get at least 2 or 3 books out a year, and just if we can include the boys and let the boys be a part of it. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask about. So do the CIOs make cameos? So these are the chief inspiration officers.
Yes.
And do they make cameos in the next couple of projects?
Oh, they always do. I mean, every hero that I've ever written is inspired by my boys because they are brilliant and big-hearted and kind and insane and annoying and justifiably just miraculous. So yeah, every hero I write is inspired by my boys, and you'll notice them in all of my stories that they find their way in there.
I've seen a lot of very heroic imagery. Yeah, looking pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious about writers, what writers do when they're not writing. I feel like it's a great way for folks to get to know us. What have you been up to when you do find a second to kind of take a breath and not write?
I'm really bad about that. The thing that I love to do that's inspiring and opens me up is actually the thing that I do for my job. So, I don't have another outlet besides watching Miyazaki movies on loop. I love to cook and I love to spend time with my boys, and I know way too much about Fortnite and Minecraft just from listening to their stories when people recounted to me. But
did you get to Warhammer after the?
I got to Warhammer, and that was awesome. Nice to smash through creatures. It was a very good release, and I'm playing Dragon Age Veilguard right now, which is really cool.
But like me, you have to schedule it, right?
You gotta schedule it.
If I get through this, then I get a couple of days.
Well, this is like late at night, everything that's like helps you to kind of get your creative juices back usually happens after dinner and after I've seen them go to sleep, and then that's when all that magic happens. But the fun thing is that we live in this amazing community called Bridge Meadows in Beaverton, which is a combination of foster and adopt families and elders, and we have all these amazing interactions with our community that also feeds and inspires. And like my children, it sometimes is a little annoying and a little bit much, yeah. But that's what community is about. It's like family. It's like going to Thanksgiving dinner. They drive you nuts because you love them, and I think we're really blessed that we got that too.
Well, and I wanted to ask about that. So you and Josie do so much work as advocates. Tell everybody about that work, why that's, I think it's obvious why it's so important to you, but also, what you've been up to and all the work that you have done. It's really cool.
Yeah, we've been foster adopt parents for 15 years before our license lapsed, and we adopted boys. I think that so much of the work that you do in foster and adopt, when you're working with children and children who have experienced trauma and that kind of thing, it's about learning how to understand their story, and helping them to understand their story as well. So that just ties right into being a storyteller, somebody that writes these kinds of books. And we find that a lot of times when kids have been exposed to that kind of trauma, helping them to learn how to understand that they are in control of their personal story, their narrative is important. And as a kid, I was always looking for those little inspirations and always in the reading that I was doing. So I like to tell people I'm full parts Frodo Baggins, I'm full parts, the Peasantry Kids from Chronicles of Narnia, I'm a little bit of Harry Potter. It's all of that. It's all mixed in there. And reading is a great way to learn about how tragedy and sometimes trauma and tough things can help mold you into the person that you are. It gets you empathy, it gets you experience, and it also opens your eyes to a lot of different walks of life. So I feel that that kind of work, working with our community, working with DHS Oregon, and working with Autism Society, in Park, Oregon Coast Adoption Resource Center, working with those groups doesn't just elevate the knowledge of what being in a foster or adopt family is, but it feeds into our creative process because it helps us to realize what are the things that we can do to help bolster kids, inspire their creativity, and help them become the fullest, brightest version of themselves. Because they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. They just need to be given that opportunity to shine all the time, you know? So, yeah.
You see yourself more as Frodo, and I see you more as Aragorn. I think everybody can hear why.
I appreciate that. You know, I love that part where he kicks through the door, and in the second movie he's all like, "King," you know, he's all out. I want to do that. Most of the time, I think I'm Samwise King.
You know,
I'll kill you!
So one of the things that was really cool for all the authors who were involved in this is your art itself. And so tell everybody about that, how you went about creating that for us.
I totally apologize to all of you. I used you. I've used you as art prompts. No, seriously, as the story started to come in and I knew I wanted to illustrate each one, I wanted to make one, I kind of dove into a slightly different style this time of just pen and ink work and just letting the story guide my pen. Drawing in pen is an amazing thing because if you screw up, you have to find a way to wrap it back around into the creative process. And it makes you very conscious, it makes you very present. And as the stories came in, each one was different, you know? And since this magical world of Portland, you can go into one neighborhood and there are small fairies there, or you can go into another neighborhood and there's swifts that give people magical abilities. I mean, seeing them allows them to have magical abilities. And all of this stuff is different. So as I was reading the stories, I'm showing Josie the sketches and I'm like, is this working? And she's like, yeah, do a little bit more here, do a little bit more there. Like I mentioned, Gigi Little's story was the one that I struggled with the most, but it's like one exercise of creativity. So it's like the story is about the bridge gets up, it's alive, and it walks through the city. And I'm like, how do I make that happen? And sometimes that's what creativity is you're literally throwing yourself into the deep end and you're teaching yourself how to swim, right? And that's where the magic really happens, right? That's where the spark really lights up. So every time I got a chance to draw a different character, a different story, each one was me testing myself to make sure that I was bringing the story that my creative collaborator, my friend, who contributed to the story they told me. So, which meant a whole lot to be able to make you guys' stories come to life.
It meant a lot to us to get those and go, oh, somebody, you know, that expression, feeling seen, our work was seen. This is really, so that was really cool. Well, I don't want to take too much of our time from our readers, but I am very excited to get to hear from these folks. Should we dive right into the readings?
Sure.
Brian is so great. So when we come back from our commercial break, we will get to hear those samples from those authors read at Powell's, and you will get to share in the moment that was for them as well. And then Brian does speak at the end, so you'll want to stick around for that. But I do have a question for all of you listeners and folks who follow on YouTube. Thank you for subscribing. That actually makes a big difference. Reviewing the show, that makes a huge difference if you post a short review. But a kind of a bigger question for me, I don't know if this is a bigger question, but I have been contemplating whether or not to do a Patreon. I know those of you who listen to a lot of YouTube shows, you know that this is one of the ways that folks support the content that they take in. But I've got another way for you to do that in the Indulge Your Shelf Book Club. So I want your input. So if you think it would be something that you would like to contribute to, would be a Patreon specifically about this show or about my writing, and I, could share regular things. If that's the way that you would like to support this show and support me and my family as we make this move, and I get to write and publish, I would love to hear about that. And if you would rather just sign up for the Indulge Yourself book club, that is a wonderful way to support Not a Pipe Publishing and to support me as an author as well. And so, I just, which is more comfortable for you? Which would you prefer? Please let me know your thoughts on that. You can, of course, always email the show at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com, or you can post it in the comments on YouTube. I see those. While you're at it, click on that 5th star and give us a review. That would be great. And then on any other podcasting app, I don't get like an automatic notification of the review, but those are incredibly helpful in promoting the show for other listeners. So I would love that. But in this case, I really do want your feedback on this question: Patreon or Indulge Yourself book club. So let me know which of those would be more appealing to you. Now we go to the ad break, and you'll get to hear a little bit more about the Indulge Yourself book club. Thanks, everybody.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you.
And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Yourself book club today. Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering.
Hi, I'm children's author Sarah Geddes. I'd love for you to check out my book, Henry the Sneezing Dragon. It's about a clumsy dragon in search of friendship. My book, To the Moon, a Jacob and Trevor adventure, will be released September 2024, a story about 2 little boys who use fairy dust to travel to the moon. And in fall 2024, The Water Bear Astronaut, about a tardigrade who travels to space, will also be coming out. All books will be available on Amazon.
I'm Mary Kendall. I'm a fiction writer. I write stories that are weird, odd, gothic-y, a little bit left off center. What is this? This is my latest release, Bottled Secrets of Rosewood. It's billed as a contemporary gothic thriller, and it's being touted as a page-turner by people that are reading it. It was inspired by a real-life find, a blue bottle that was uncovered in an archaeology dig outside of Williamsburg, Virginia. The bottle was discovered to be a witch bottle. Witch bottles were a thing back in the day. They were filled with items such as thorns, clippings, glass chips to draw out evil intent from the person holding the bottle. Sound interesting? You can find out more at my website, marykendallauthor.com, or if you'd like to buy the book, it's available where all books are sold.
Okay, Amy Carl is visiting us too from Seattle, so please, a round of applause.
Hey everyone, before I get started, my book is over on my locker, so I gotta grab that. I just really want to thank Brian and Josie for taking a chance on a Seattle author when they originally put out the call for submissions. They were like, "We're looking for Portland authors," and I was like, I believe Laura was the one who forwarded me the submissions call, and I emailed Brian and I was like, "How do you feel about Seattle peeps?" And he was like, "Yeah, okay, tell me what you got." So I'm Annie Carl. I am a Seattle-based author. I have 3 books and a smattering of short stories. And if you're curious about that, we can chat after the program is over. I write science fiction and fantasy with disabled main characters. So our main character in Fairies in the Park, which it's about midway through, has a disabled mom, but that's not the point of the story. So I'm going to read you a few pages. I'm going to read you the first few pages of Fairies in the Park. It's page 123. Easy to remember, 1, 2, 3. And then you get to read the rest later. Standing in the yard by my car, I glance at the neighbor's shed. Despite the fresh coat of blue paint and bright blue trim, the roof is covered in moss and leaves, a juxtaposition I notice every morning when I leave for work. The sun shines through a rift in the clouds, rain dripping down a drop or 3 at a time. Something whizzes by my ear and I smile as I get in my little blue car. Spring in the Pacific Northwest brings out the best in the creatures that live here, especially the hummingbirds. Morning, Gertie, I say, greeting my part-time employee as I enter through the back door. She looks up from her desk, covered in stacks of books she's entering into the computer. I imagine the wood creaking under the weight of the hardcovers and paperbacks piled on its surface. Gertie's gray curls bounce against her full cheeks as she looks up and smiles at me. Morning, Belina. Gertie shifts her gaze from the window behind me. The crows are raucous today. The fairies must be teasing them. You think fairies are teasing the crows? I work hard not to roll my eyes. Don't fairies live in the woods or in their own realm, not near the Willamette? Gertrude Donner has a propensity for the fantasy section and solidly believes fairies exist. Anytime something is out of place, it's because of the fairies and their antics. There's more than enough magical forests and woods around here to host 10 courts of the Fae. Gertie sniffs at me, turning back to her computer. And I think more than that actually do live here. We settle into our day, Gertie leaving at lunchtime as usual. Gertie brings the books from the back room up to the front counter for me to shelf before leaving. She stacks a brightly colored stock to my right, leaving room for customers to place purchases in front of me. I'm simultaneously stuffing a Hot Pocket in my mouth, helping a customer on the phone and shelving books when Adam, my 12-year-old, wanders in through the front door. The bell tinkles cheerfully as the door opens and shuts. Mom, he whines while I'm still on the phone, I'm hungry. This complaint has plagued my partner and I since Adam was a baby. He's insatiable. I point at the back room and gesture at my Hot Pocket. Grinning, Adam catapults off to inspect the small fridge-freezer combo next to Gertie's desk. As soon as I'm off the phone, having set aside 3 books for the caller, I set down my own snack and follow the sounds of microwave beeps in the back. Hey, Boo Bear, how was school? Adam recently started middle school and has serious issues with me still calling him Boo Bear. But it's been his nickname since he was in utero, so I can't stop now. Prepubescence looming or no. Besides, the glee coursing through me at his embarrassment is so worth it. School was school, he shrugs, largely ignoring my question, but I saw a fairy on the walk from the bus stop to the store. I roll my eyes at this. First Gertie, now Adam. Honey, fairies don't exist, I say, pushing his hair back from his forehead. I'm unruly and thick like my dad's. Adam's hair is untamable. Many a hairdresser has tried. You probably saw a dragonfly or a hummingbird. One dived on me this morning on my way to work. Nope, Adam said, turning serious blue eyes on me. It was a fairy. Small person attached to wings. That's a fairy, right? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annie. I think next we'll go with Mr. Sean Fishback, educator, author extraordinaire.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The one thing I'll say about my story, I wrote from the perspective of an 8th grade boy. And when Brian told us about the story length, he said 2,000 words. So if you count them, my story is exactly 2,000 words. All right. So this is called Why My Crush is a Fairy, an argumentative essay by Sean Fishback, 8th grade language arts. and that all counts towards the 2,000 words. Well, what can ail thee, knight in arms, alone and palely loitering? From La Belle Dame Sans Merci by John Keats. Mr. Wonder, who is my English teacher, says that we should start our argumentative essays with an opening that most people can relate to. Then we add sentences that are more and more narrowly focused until we reach our thesis, which is the argument of our essay, but not like an argument like a fight, but kind of like a fight on paper. This way, the reader isn't defensive at first like they would be in a real fight. Then you guide them slowly like a trap, and then bam, hit them with your thesis right in the brain. My thesis, the girl I have a crush on, is a fairy. Then Mr. Wonder says that you can't make claims all willy-nilly. That's how he talks. He's old like my grandpa, like 40-something. You need to give your reader evidence, but that's not enough. He said that we need to be like Sherlock Holmes and explain the evidence. That's called an illusion. When I reference another story like Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Wonder says it makes our writing more interesting. I like Benedict Cumberbatch when he was Sherlock, but more as Dr. Strange, so I guess he's right. So what evidence do I have that she's a fairy? I'm glad that you asked, or at least I hope you're asking. Or I'm going to assume you're asking. Firstly, is her name, or lack of a name, or too many names. It depends on how you look at it. When she first moved to our school, I remember she was in Mrs. Coe's first period. She came in late with long, beautiful lime green hair braided down her back. She was stunning, smashing, and striking in a light-colored spring dress with little crimson flowers. I heard Mr. Wonder say his heart skipped a beat when he first met his wife. That's what my heart did. Well, it might have skipped a few beats. I just suddenly realized I wasn't breathing and had to suddenly catch my breath again, just like my dad, who has sleep apnea. Anyway, Mrs. Coe met her near the door and quietly introduced herself. You must be, Mrs. Coe started scanning the roll sheet to find the new student's name. You can call me Morgan, she said. Welcome, Morgan. I'm Mrs. Coe. Anyway, this by itself is not sufficient evidence to prove my point. If I were a lawyer, I would not win my case. The game is still afoot. But in second period, something strange happened. According to my friend Jory, who told David, who told Lauren during lunch, she said her name wasn't Morgan at all. Apparently, in science with Mr. Berger, who doesn't enjoy burgers and no, he doesn't think it's funny when you ask him, she said her name was Blue. Mr. Berger apparently didn't appreciate the irony of a green-haired girl named Blue either. But he teaches science, not English. The sciencey folks probably aren't too keen on irony. But the pattern continued. In third period, she went by Moira. In fourth, Belle. I heard her in the hall between classes by the drinking fountain. She introduced herself as Corey. By fifth, she was Ariel. She ended her day as Lilith. The next day, I was talking about this with Abby and Andrea in Mr. Wonder's class. Mr. Wonder apparently overheard us. Maybe she's Faye, he said, walking by her table. I hadn't realized she'd been eavesdropping. No, she said her name was Blue, I said. Mr. Wonder chuckled. Fae, it means a fairy creature. Fairies are very particular with their names. They know names carry great power. The power of your true name can be used against you. That's why so many stories warn us about giving our real names to fairies. But fairies don't exist, I pointed out. Well, you make a compelling argument, but why else would somebody give so many different names? Fluid identity? Asked Abby. Witness protection? Offered Andrea. A nom de plume? I said. He adjusted his glasses and smiled. Middle school is the last bastion of romance, he said to no one in particular before walking away. I don't know what he meant by that. If the girl gets the girl, or more accurately, if the girl gets the boy.
Thanks, Sean. Sean's class was one of the first public events that I did as a publisher, so it's awesome that we got a chance to do this project together.
Sure, thank you.
Good. I think next we'll go with Colleen East. Welcome, Colleen.
Hello. So I'm a recent import to Portland. I moved here a couple years ago with my husband, and I got involved with the Limit Writers. I help out with the Hills for a chapter, and that's how I met Brian. He actually had someone drop out of the anthology. Like the morning I was talking to him to set up like a thing with our chapter, and he was like, do you want it? I was like, yes, yes, please. So spirit of Thanksgiving. I am incredibly grateful that you offered me that chance to write a story for you. So for my story, the prompt was, public transit in Portland involving something magical. And in my research with Portland, I found out that there's quite a few volunteers around the city that do what are known as bike buses, where basically, you got a couple adult volunteers and they, round up the kids in the morning and they all bike together so that it's safer and they get a little more fresh air and exercise before they start classes for the morning. So I went with that as my inspiration for the public transit. So I'm going to read the first couple pages. There once was a boy who angered a fairy, and this is the story of how he learned to undo. Listen. Brett, which was his name, was the last kid picked up for the school by the bike bus. His mom made him get up earlier than normal for a school day, only to wait forever at the bike bus stop at the end of his block. He hated that. He was the only one who waited at his stop. He hated that too. At all the other stops, groups of kids would wait for Mr. Carroll and Miss Shelby to show up and escort them. At his, there was only him and a little blue birdhouse mounted on the top of a post. As far as he could tell, there'd never been a bird in it, so he didn't even have that for company. More than anything, though, he hated it when the bike bus finally arrived. He could hear them before he saw them come around the corner at the end of the block, with Mr. Carroll first, tall and gangly like a scarecrow on his slim silver bike, and always wearing his big dorky yellow safety vest. A bike flag with their elementary school's mascot flew proudly above his back tire. Miss Shelby took the rear. She was a retired old lady who lived on Brett Street. She put the little birdhouse on top of the bike post. Brett had watched her do it from his bedroom window. Her big stupid vest was orange. The other kids flew between them like a flock of parrots, their cheeks peaked from the ride. They all had fun, but Brett only got about 10 minutes on his bike before they got to school. No fun at all. None of the other kids talked to him much. They had plenty of time to play during the ride and make friends, like Maria Escolar. She was the one first picked up by Mr. Carroll and Miss Shelby, and she always had someone who run into right next to her. Brett hated her for that. Maria decorated her handlebars with sparkly streamers and put stickers all over her purple helmet. She liked the fairies in particular. Her mom even sewed fairy wings on her backpack. Brett made sure to let her know that each and every one of those things was stupid. What's wrong with fairies, she asked. They're not real, Brett said. But I like them. Do you still believe in Santa Claus too? Maria cried, not because she still believed in Santa, but because she didn't understand why he was always so mean. Brett wanted to bike to school by himself, but his mom insisted he wait for the bike bus. It's good for you, she said. It's safer, she said. You'll make friends, she said. But no matter how much he told her that wasn't happening, she still insisted he keep trying. You just have to be nice, she'd always reply. So he waited at the bike bus post. Waiting made him bored. Boredom made him fidgety. And when he got fidgety, things tended to break. He started with kicking the post. Scuff marks from his shoes accumulated around his base. Then the post was loose, so Brett wiggled it, pushed it, heaved his entire body against it, until finally it fell over. The little birdhouse smashed against the sidewalk. Brett thought he saw a winged thing dart away out of the wreckage, but when he peered into the broken pieces, there were no bird's nests to be found. He must have imagined it. The bike bus came around the corner a moment later. Brett lied about it. He wasn't about to get in trouble over a stupid pole. It just fell over, he told Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll shook his head. Sure is a shame, he said as he looked right at Brett. The post is easy to fix, but Miss Shelby made that birdhouse herself. Miss Shelby also looked right at him. Are you sure you had nothing to do with this? Brett froze up for a moment. Then he said, no, I didn't. If Brett had been careful with his words, maybe the fairy would have been miffed but moved on. There are other places for a fairy to hang out besides a birdhouse on a sign, after all. Plenty of rocks and trees and deep pools of water. But listen, fairies have a thing about words. Everyone does, really. It's powerful magic. Words can be used to trick, as fairies often do, which is why it's best not to tangle with them. Trickery is one thing, though. Santa is a trick, and a right jolly one at that. This story is a trick, too. Tricks are only good fun, as far as fairies and storytellers are concerned, and can often lead to truth. But if there's one thing fairies hate more than having their home destroyed, it's outright lies. Lies tangle and trap and smother like invasive ivy in a garden. Human words, and therefore human lies, are uniquely potent. Undoing their planting in the web of the world takes a mighty shovel and a great prayer indeed.
I'm telling you all these stories are so amazing. Thank you. Our next person up, Niyyah.
I'm Niyyah Ruscher-Haqq, and I wrote a story with Brian and Josie asked about magic, a story about magic in Portland. I actually got to the Chapman's books, which we went to together, because it was a way that brought a lot of Portland's quirkier people together. So I thought, what if Portland's quirks were tied to events like that? And so we're going to meet Hussein, who is 12 years old, and he goes to Edgewood School for the Exceptionally Curious, where everyone has their quirk of different magical types expressed, except him. He hasn't quite figured out how to call the Chapman's books home. And so we're going to read an excerpt kind of from the middle, which shows kind of what can happen if he's not able to deliver. It's only been 7 more days, but weird changes are happening at Edgewood. The library doors have locked themselves and refuse to open. The teachers complained about the never-ending coffee pot burning their daily brew. Even Isaac had to come up for air balloons when he was swimming. Rumors echoed through the halls. It's all because of the Swiss. No, it's climate change. No, we're vitamin D deficient. The teachers changed their lessons to keep birds on our brains. Professor Andi has us perform avian formations in her global roots class. We dance with fan veils, floating and waving the teal and gray silk-like wings to emulate flight. Professor Francis has us bind books with feathers stitched on the spine. No one can measure speed, but it's a waste of time to raise a teacher with 8 arms. I swoop down the hall and into the school kitchen. Yana is wiping down one of the steel tables on the left side of the kitchen, wearing a shirt with a cat in a spacesuit next to a sparkly blue planet, which reads, Her Purity. I check the right side of the room. Nick is juggling steel pots like they're tennis balls, his cronies cheering them on. I picked Yana. She nods her head at me, and my shoulders relax. At least she's not ignoring me like practically everyone is now. Chef Kiki walks in wearing a big white hat with an orchid blossom pinned on the side. Thank you for cooking with me today. To honor and invite our Swift friends, we're making Himalayan momo, deliciously spiced dumplings shaped like little nests. I follow her lead, barely listening. I grab ginger root and cut thin strips, something a Swift might use for a nest. The Swifts, the Swifts, the Swifts, none who call them so effortlessly. It shouldn't be this hard. It's like there's a buzz I can almost touch. Almost. I fold my momo, imagining Swift babies leaving their nests and flocking in a giant cloud of tiny birds shaped like cigars with wings. After the dumplings are made, Chef Kiki smiles and asks who needs their momo frozen. And of course, everyone wants them frozen because then we get to see her pork in action. Everyone lines up behind our trays. Chef Kiki closes her eyes. I think of the peaks of the Himalaya. I feel cold air. I see white, and I look for it here, the peaks of Mount Hood, and in a surprise storm in February. I call the snow. Snowflakes flutter over the bags. The cool air rushes against our skin as she goes down the line, freezing each bag, and we cheer with each icy burst. But her smile drops when she gets to my tray. Her forehead crumples up in confusion, and she breathes in again. My tray stays at room temperature. Chef Kiki tries again. Nothing. Her mouth opens. No one makes a sound. Chef Kiki wrinkles her brow and lifts her hands. I call the snow. She says it louder this time, but no snow comes. The only thing that emerges is a tear falling from Chef Kiki's eye. It's happening, Yana says. I drop my head. I don't want to see their stares. It's happening now, and it's all my fault. I feel heat in my cheeks and my eyes sting, and panic rises in my chest, and I cannot cry in front of everyone. May I be excused? I'll walk you to the office. Chef Kiki smooths down her coat as we exit. I don't want to walk with her, to see her upset, to see what I'm causing. To make matters worse, we've barely stepped outside before I hear Nick's voice. They let him in without proving himself, and now the corks are disappearing. Chef Kiki grabs my arm and hustles toward the nurse's office. Tears trickle down her cheek. Whoa. A professor crying in front of you is not covered in the student manual. Her voice cracks a little when she speaks. When I came to Portland, your grandmother helped me a lot, and she helped all of us. She knew how important it was to welcome guests that come into our space. And you're a helper too, so I know everything will work out fine. She's trying to help, to cheer me up, but my brain had Nick's voice on repeat. Chef Kiki lost her quirk, and the rest will be next. I can't stay with her anymore. I'm really sorry about your quirk, I say. I run to the bathroom before the tears fall.
All right. Next will be John Slovacek. And we have a writer that traveled here all the way from Canada to be with us today. I think our time is going to be running a little close, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get everybody in. All right. John!
Brian and I met through the ASTRONAUT chalk show in Hillsborough. So we met through art, and then writing kind of came as a secondary thing. So for this story, I love the magical realism and trying to find new ways to live in Portland. But what ended up happening as I was working on it, I had a brand new baby. He was born on Christmas. He was the noisemaker. And then there was a freeze, and so we had a very noisy baby in the midst of a freeze, and that became kind of the heart of the story, sort of the way that the freezes keep coming around you stronger and stronger until the winter sort of remembers how much fun it had to terrorize the humans, and it centers in on one particular family. I'm just grabbing a little excerpt from the middle here. The world outside was entombed in snow. Silence had fallen across the town. They sat on the couch by the fireplace and followed the storm's progress online. There were dramatic images of nearby places being buried in snow. There was Pioneer Square downtown, an unrecognizable winter hollow. Here was a video of the Willamette River carrying ice and slush heavily along its banks. The freeways were desolate, windswept car graveyards. Liam started to batten down the hatches, taking stock of inventory, counting the jugs of water out in the garage. There was no telling how long the storm would last. Soon the freezing rain started. The soft snow was petrified in ice. The branches outside bowed against the sudden weight of frost. Wind howled at the windows, and Liam swore it sounded familiar. Still, he made no mention of the apparition from the field. Baby Calamity was inconsolable for hours. They had taken turns bouncing her as her wails filled the house and buzzed in their ears. She finally drifted off around midnight. An hour later, Liam was the only one still awake. Ice and rain rattled against the walls in a steady hiss. Nervously, uneasily, he paced the house's second floor. It wasn't their first freeze by far, but this one felt different. It seemed to carry an unsettling weight that chilled something deeper than what could be seen or felt. Abruptly, disturbingly, the crackling sleep outside stopped. Liam found the nearest window and peered out into the darkness. A ray of moonlight had parted the clouds, and there in the distance loomed the silhouette of Mount Hood. Liam felt something seize his heart, something familiar and ancestral. He was certain he could feel its ancient gaze on him. Liam shivered, badly needing sleep. He was a father now and had no time for these flights of fancy. He was about to turn away when he saw her again. A woman, stretched by some spectral wind, was dancing across the frozen snow below. She drifted in and out of the moonlight, hair like dead branches thrashing in a gale, arms twisting into impossible angles. She craned her head back and stared up at him. The rain started again, and she vanished into the icy ground.
So, I think we'll open it up for questions. Sure. And I'm excited to hear what questions you may have. All right. This is like when I'm teaching at Portland State, you know, it's always, nobody wants to be the first person, all right?
We call it wait time.
Yeah.
You just have to be silent. I have bonsai in my classroom, force myself to be quiet.
There's a prize for the first question. Back there. Here, I will bring the mic too.
Oh, thanks,
Okay.
You know my voice can project across.
I know yours can.
Yeah.
This person back here.
Yeah.
I have a piece of artwork for you.
I've been saying politely, that's going out the window. Anyway, so I love hearing you talk about how fostering has inspired a lot of the story and a lot of the theming that went behind it. But a thing that I hear a lot when it's discussing either fantasy or sci-fi or just fiction in general is they go, oh, this is a metaphor for X, as if metaphors are suddenly bad or whatever. So I was curious about your theming of that. Like, should fantasy exist in a vacuum, or is that even to be done in the first place?
I don't think that any kind of storytelling can exist in a vacuum. You know, strangely enough, every action and every interaction that you have, I think, affects the stories that you tell. I tell my kids stories off the top of my head, partially because I can't remember stories clearly enough to give them a full plot, but usually it incorporates a whole bunch of things that are happening through the course of the day, and that can be social events, it can be an interaction they have with a friend. So I think that stories are a beautiful thing because they pull together so many random elements and experiences into something, and it makes them even more relevant that way. But of course you had a great question.
You come up here. You come up here.
Question?
I'll be your microphone guy.
Oh, you be my microphone guy? I love you, man. I love you.
My question is, do you have a character in the book that was particularly surprising to you or inspiring, or just one that has like a little special place in your heart?
I think all of the stories, I mean, of course I have to say that, but all of the stories were surprising to me. They caught me off guard, and especially since I was doing the illustrations as well, each one, I had to kind of dive in and explore each one. But there were a couple that really did get me. Gigi's story about personifying the Hawthorne Bridge was like, you know, how do you make a bridge have an identity, you know? And that was intriguing. And then Miff Lindsay wrote a story that's a dialogue between two friends standing by the edge of a river or a body of water. And then the conversation is amazing because I don't understand my boys a lot of the time. That's the jargon that they use. I think I have skipping riz, so you know. So just hearing this dialogue between these two teenagers just kind of made me think of my boys, and that was real surprising for me. But I mean, all of the stories have this kind of beautiful imagery and recognizable places, which then makes you, when you go out into Portland, it makes you ask that question, you know, down this road, is this a fairy community, you know? Is that large clump near that bridge, is that a bridge troll just kind of waiting to ask you 3 questions in exchange for some voodoo donuts? I don't know. So each one was, it opened my mind to the possibilities.
At least 2 of the stories have Brian as cameo character in the story too, so keep an eye out for Brian. You didn't write
ask them to do that. They did that of their own volition.
Who's magic in town? We're putting Brian in the story. Who's next?
Oh. Mr. Chuck.
I assume that you saw some magic today.
I did.
I mean, you want to tell us about it?
Oh, just the fact that, you know, I the first days that we moved here to Portland, for people that don't know us, we were living in Anchorage, Alaska, and working 9 to 5 adult jobs. Until my wife really said, you know, I'm tired of hearing bellyache about wanting to tell stories. We should go and do it for real. So we sold so much stuff, and I cashed in my little chunk of 401k, and we decided we were moving down here to Portland because this is a literary community. This is a community for creatives, and just had some hard times, in the last couple of years. But I think that power, that creative energy is still here. It's still, powerful. So when we came down here, we didn't know where to live. We went to a Motel 6 on 83rd, and we were like, where's the parts of town? We don't know where the parts of town are. We literally, all the research we did flew out the window the moment we set foot in town. And not to mention, this place is hard to navigate. So part of the reason why we think this place is a magical conglomerate of different alternate dimensions. You can drive down the street only one way, and it'll turn into a cul-de-sac. And then there's no way to get out, so you literally are stuck there. So we're doing all of that. And in the midst of that, I knew that Powell's was here. This is one of the main reasons we moved here, was to get to Powell's. So we had no home, living in Motel 6, and I said, Joseph, we gotta go to Powell's. And it was an adventure just getting here. I didn't know it was possible for you to have a large place like this. I didn't know where to park. We've met so many interesting people. I think we had more than a couple of accidents. But when we got here, we stood in that lobby, and it's a world famous space, right? And I was like, someday, we're gonna do a book event here. And that's what's happening right now, all right? So, all of you are witness to a manifestation, a prayer, a wish, sent out to the universe, and it's made solid, and you're a part of it. So that's magic. That's magic. All right. Son, I have a question from a beautiful young golden man here in front. Yes, sir.
What made you want to write?
What made me want to write?
Good question. It's a good question.
You guys, if anybody's seen any of the interviews that we've done, I'd say the same thing all the time. When I was a kid, I used to be a huge liar. Epic level, top tier, gold star liar. And it's not that I wanted to fool anybody. I just wanted to tell people stories. And I thought that my life was too boring to engage them. So very often I would make up people. I would say things that happened that didn't happen. I actually got my whole second grade class to cry by telling them that there was a huge explosion at my dad's job. He had saved a whole bunch of people and a dog. They were like, oh my God. And the teacher called my mother to give her condolences from the accident, which then led to one of the worst punishments I ever got in my entire life. So I loved telling stories. I loved engaging people in stories. So I've always wanted to tell stories. Sometimes I lacked the confidence to do so, but I was also a nerd. I used to walk around with a briefcase with an Agatha Christie book in it and a pipe. Yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm that nerd. But
we're all going through going, which is the nerdiest part of it? That's tough.
Let's just say too that there may have been a handkerchief with a little bit of red acrylic paint in it, as if it was a murder case. I'm sorry. I know you have to experience this with me. But just the fact that I've been able to have this amazing life, my wife and I, we connected through wanting to tell stories. Our first date was in a bookstore, Walden Books at Village Fair Mall in Meridian, Mississippi. And she introduced me to Langston Hughes, and I fell head over heels with her. She was 16 and I was 17, so we've always loved books and we've loved engaging with stories. And the fact that we could do this as our profession, as our way of connecting with people, as our way of raising up our community and inspiring creativity in not only young people, but for everybody. This is a huge, huge blessing every single day. And I can't even put into words how happy I am to be here with you and to be able to share this book with you and all of our contributors and all of our creative friends and stuff that helped us take part in putting this book together. Thank you.
That was an excellent place for us to wrap up and for all of you to go get copies and take them down and purchase them. So thank you all for being here.
If I take my time